Is a feud about to kick off between the conqueror William Bonac and Nick Walker? What's up, guys? This is Christian Duke, and you're watching thisweekinbodybuilding.com. So, guys, there's a lot of talk right now going around based on some very vague messages by William the Conqueror Bonac. But you know, guys, I just got to be real here. You know, this whole show is about being real. And the fact is, I feel that in 2020, William Bonac was very much cast into the shadows. You know, with COVID and, shows being postponed and ultimately canceled, with the Olympia being postponed and then ultimately the city's change, which hasn't happened in a long time, I feel that, the driving force was to make sure that the event would be profitable, sell tickets, break even, that sort of thing. And I feel like they had a for Olympia approach, the comeback of PhilHeath, Dexter Jackson probably retiring. You had Brandon Curry, his first Olympia defense, and then you had Flex Lewis making his open debut. There was just so much that went into that I feel that they ignored William Bonac, who had placed second the year prior and had won the Arnold Classic that year. They ignored other guys like, the 2019 People's Champion, Ruli Winkler, who was said to be looking the best of his whole career because they wanted this for Olympia strategy. When Flex Lewis dropped out because of health, I believe they invited Big Ramy. So now you had three Olympias getting the attention, plus Big Ramy, a little bit, reciprocally for Hadi Chupin, but it still left William Bonac and Ruli Winkler basically out on the sidelines, when in reality their placings and what they brought to the stage should have commanded that they be considered as, potential Mr. Olympias. After the 2020 event, I feel that William Bonac continues to be relegated to the shadows, and this is why, people like Nick Walker and Hunter Labrada, who haven't been pros but for 2 years, granted they've had big wins to date, but still, is it really fair to put Nick Walker or Hunter Labrada in the same category as William Bonac? I don't think so. And while Nick won the New York Pro, and it was a stacked lineup. I wouldn't say it was the toughest lineup of the recent past, but it was a good lineup. It doesn't compare to winning the Arnold Classic or placing second at the Mr. Olympia. And so, I don't know if William was taking a personal jab at Nick or Hunter or anybody else, but I do feel that, he has every right to be just a smidgen offended by being lumped in with basically second and third tier bodybuilders. And this may be extremely offensive to those guys, and I don't mean it to be, but if you've been pro for 2 or less years and you're a second tier, a middle tier bodybuilder, I think that's a hell of a compliment. I think that's incredible. I just feel that, and again, I don't know if he's resentful. I don't know. But I do know that he has essentially been knocked down several notches on the importance ladder there. And it's not because of his placings, and it's not because of his ambassadorial qualities. It's just simply because I guess he's not a trash talker, and because, he wasn't part of the big picture marketing approach. But, again, I think, William's comments were more so against the state of the times than they were against any particular bodybuilder. But I certainly invite you to leave your comments down below, and I appreciate you guys watching This Week in Bodybuilding, brought to you courtesy of TitanMedicalCenter.com. This Week in Bodybuilding, brought to you courtesy of TitanMedicalCenter.com. For all the amazing therapies like Titan Complete and Nectar of the Gods, learn more at TitanMedicalCenter.com. So a lot of talk about a potential PhilHeath podcast. I got to tell you something, folks. I love podcasts, whether it's Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, the late great Imus, for example. I like podcasts because I identify with the host. And I like when the host has something to say and when the host has a real good perspective. Now, take PhilHeath, for example. PhilHeath knows bodybuilding. He's a Mr. Olympia. He's been competing for, years. 7-time champion. Could maybe potentially one day be 8-time champion and tie with Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman, maybe even get 9. But more importantly, he knows the sport. He knows the sport as a competitor. He knows the sport as a promoter because he's always had a good show. He knows the sport as an influencer. He's got good relationships, and it's just, The thing about it is that, while he has a lot of critics, I'm one of them, and I've been blocked for years as a result, which I don't necessarily think is the best way for, the ambassador of the sport to carry himself, but that doesn't matter. Whether you love him or you hate him, you have to recognize the guy knows bodybuilding. He is one of the greatest bodybuilders that's ever lived. And I feel like, listening to him would be a joy as a bodybuilding fan. But, like, for example, Howard Stern or Chuck Zito or the late great Imus or Joe Rogan, if they're hosts, it's a host-driven show. So like if like the guest, for example, even a titled guest, a featured guest can't be there, they can still run the show every bit as much as they could with the co-host or the special guest. Whether it's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, they would have no trouble flying solo. You know what I mean? That is part of what makes a show great. The versatility of the host, the life experiences of the coach, the speculation of the coach, even the biases of the coach, right? They make for the show. And so I feel that Phil would be a fantastic podcast host. And, unlike other podcasts that generally need to have, 8 episodes or 10 episodes or 20 episodes before they can start bringing on sponsors and selling advertising, because you can't sell advertising to something that doesn't exist, right? So you'd want to have a good body of work. Phil doesn't need that. People know who he is. They know what he's about. They know what he's capable of. I could see big sponsors lining up to invest in the show from the ground up, even before a single episode has hit the air. So I think that it would be marketed correctly. Also, Danny Garcia in his corner. I mean, come on. I mean, Danny Garcia as a business manager, Phil with his world of experience. This podcast could be something really, really big. As of yet, it's just a rumor, it's speculation, it may or may not happen, but if it did happen, I could see it being really, really big. Libido enhancers, injectable vitamins, glutathione, and so much more at TitanMedicalCenter.com. Lee Priest saying, do it or don't, or whatever he said to Kai Greene, to me is just ludicrous. I mean, Kai is known for kind of toying with the whole comeback. He's walking around at 317 pounds, looking lean, looking mean, looking ready for the stage, right? Fans are going crazy, as they go crazy every year, But to me, there's like a kind of like, the pot calling the kettle black kind of situation here, because, Lee Priest hasn't been on an IFBB stage, IFBB Pro League stage, since 2006. Goes to the PDI, goes to NABA, goes wherever except for the greatest stage in the planet. And what did he have to complain about? What was so bad about Lee Priest's life? He was making a lot of money. He had big contracts. He was on the cover of the magazines. He was top 6 at the Olympia. What did he have to complain about? And, it certainly wasn't improving the lot for the competitors, because if that was the case, where was he when Bob Ciccarello and Sean Ray were doing that very thing and were having meetings? And who was one of the main people that was absent from those meetings? Lee Priest. So his rebellion made no sense. While Kai, on the other hand, had the issue with the booth and the Olympia and whatever, who knows? We don't know. But, they're both rebels, right? And neither one has competed, and they both like to kind of toy with comebacks. But you don't have Kai Greene telling Lee Priest, hey, get on stage. It's been 15 years since you've done a single show. We've had to hear about you saying that you could beat Flex Lewis at 100%. We've heard you saying that the 212 was made for you, yet we haven't seen you get on stage. Bob Ciccarello helped you get your pro card. You didn't do anything with that. Kai Greene doesn't do it, but why is Lee Priest doing it to Kai Greene? Well, because Lee Priest appears at RX Muscle. RX Muscle needs hits. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a little ironic to me is all, that Lee Priest would be asking Kai Greene for something that he himself has been unable to do for 15 years and may never do it again. So, I don't know. Not throwing shade at Lee necessarily, just maybe some critical skepticism, constructive criticism, if you will. It's just odd, it's just odd. To me, it's odd, and maybe that's why it's so newsworthy. I don't know. I'm talking about it here on This Week is Bodybuilding, so that could be it. Maybe I fell for the clickbait. The immune system has never been more important than it is in the here and now. Check out TitanMedicalCenter.com's injectable vitamins today. Guys, IFBB Pro Nicolas Vullont, the Swiss pocket knife, as he's known throughout the world. 212 terror in his day, won in Tampa in a very, very stacked lineup, has done interviews. I mean, just somebody that has been good to the fans. And so the reason that I mention interviews, a lot of pros don't do interviews. They don't see the benefit to it. It takes time. They've got to be at a certain spot, a certain time. They've got to really dig deep sometimes. Some of these questions can be very introspective, even more so than sometimes people want to be. But those that do interviews are good to the fans. And Nicolas was always good to the fans, giving interviews to MPC News Online, to Muscular Development, just a good, solid guy. And solid, in fact, because he won in Tampa. And you don't win Tampa unless you're 100%. But, he put out a very, heartfelt, candid, and real post on Instagram, saying that it was time to hang him up and that, he was effectively retired. And so, I admire that. I would have liked Nicolas to have had a stage like Dexter Jackson had last year at the Olympia, where he could have, bid his fans farewell. But the other thing too is it's really not a bidding farewell type situation, as many of you know. A lot of times competitive bodybuilders will, transition to other parts of the industry. They may become writers, personal trainers, go back to their personal training, I should say, or maybe take it up for the first time, work in corporate capacities with supplement companies, just do a million things, so I'm sure that Nicolas isn't leaving, but he has effectively retired on his terms, on his social media, and so I definitely wish him the best. 212 Tampa champion, the Swiss pocket knife, all the best of luck with all of his future endeavors. And that'll do it for this week's edition of TWIB. Be sure to head on over to TitanMedicalCenter.com. Check out all their amazing therapies, their amazing prices on blood work, and so much more. We'll see you next week.